Hey, it's Allie. Welcome back to Made by Allie. Most stories I cover, even the real ones, let you keep a little distance. You think, I would have noticed, I would have left, I would have trusted my gut. I don't have that distance with this one. Because Sarah did everything right. She was careful, she kept notes, she called the police. And it still almost wasn't enough. Let's get into it. Her name was Sarah Dunlap. She worked in insurance, had just ended a long relationship, and needed a fresh start. She spent weeks looking good, locks, natural light, a building that felt maintained, a landlord who picked up the phone. She did a proper walkthrough on a weekday afternoon and signed the lease 2 weeks later. The landlord's name was Carl Tibbs. 61, soft-spoken, zip-up fleece. He'd owned the building 9 years, managed it himself, lived on the first floor. He remembered small things like her cat's name after hearing it once. The fact that she occasionally worked from home. He seemed like the kind of landlord people left 5-star reviews for. Sarah moved in the first weekend of October with her cat, a grey tabby named Fig. That first night felt like relief, like she could finally exhale. It felt like a beginning. Nothing that happened next was obvious. Every single thing Sarah noticed had a perfectly reasonable explanation right next to it. That's what made it so hard to act on. That's exactly what he was counting on. It started with Fig. 7 years old, not a nervous cat, didn't startle, didn't hide, didn't yowl at nothing. But around the second week of October, he stopped going into the bedroom at night. Every single night he'd follow her down the hallway, stop at the doorway, stare at the closet, and go sleep on the couch. Sarah told herself he was still adjusting. She wrote it down anyway. October 11th. Fig won't come in the room, weird. 6 days later she came home and walked into the bathroom. The faucet was running cold water full blast. She went through her entire morning in her head. She had not turned it on. She stood there long enough for the mirror to fog up, then she turned it off. Called her mom and talked for an hour about nothing. She didn't mention the faucet. She didn't want to say it out loud. October 21st. She woke up at 2:40 in the morning for no reason. No noise, no bad dream. Just awake instantly. The bedroom felt different. She couldn't explain it then, and she still can't now. Like the air had shifted while she was sleeping. She lay there 20 minutes before closing her eyes again. Wrote down the time in the morning, 2:40 a.m. Woke up for no reason. And the room felt off. Then October 24th. The cereal box. She kept it on the second shelf every morning since she moved in. That morning it was on the top shelf. She stood in her kitchen in her work clothes and stared at it. She lived alone. No one had been in the apartment. She ate breakfast standing at the counter because she didn't want to sit down. Being still meant thinking about it. That night Fig stood at the doorway, stared at the closet, and went to sleep on the couch. Sarah pulled the covers up and stared at the closet door in the dark for a long time. By the end of October she had 2 weeks of notes. A faucet, a cereal box, a cat that wouldn't enter the room. She already knew how it sounded. She almost didn't call, she told a reporter later. I kept thinking they're going to look at me like I'm one of those people. And I almost let that stop me. She called on November 1st. 2 officers came, walked through the apartment, checked the locks, and looked at her list. One tested the faucet, said the pressure seemed fine. The other asked if she'd been under stress. New apartment, new routines, easy to misplace things. She nodded, didn't argue. They gave her a number and left. She closed the door and stood in the hallway staring at the list on her phone. That night Fig slept on the couch. Sarah laid in the dark and stared at the closet, and thought about the smell in there that had never fully gone away. There had always been a smell in that closet. Stale, like a room without fresh air for a very long time. She'd put baking soda on the shelf the first week, it didn't help. On November 3rd, she pulled everything out to clean it. With the closet empty, the smell was stronger coming from the back wall. She pressed her hand flat against the drywall. Warmer than the walls around it. She knocked, hollow. Knocked beside it, solid. She grabbed a steak knife from the kitchen, first thing she reached for, and pushed the tip into the seam at the baseboard. It went in too easily. The panel hadn't been secured to anything. It had just been set in place. She pulled it, it came away in one piece, behind it a space. 4 feet deep, 6 feet wide. A moving blanket on the floor, a storage bin, a dark hoodie folded on top. A phone with a dead battery next to a spiral notebook, a water bottle, and a pair of shoes. Someone had been living in there. She didn't open the bin, she didn't touch the notebook. She grabbed Fig, grabbed her keys, went downstairs, got in her car, and drove to a gas station 2 miles away. She called 911 from the parking lot. With Fig on her lap, and hands shaking so badly she misdialed twice. Police searched the unit that night. Inside the bin, food wrappers, clothes, a first aid kit, a phone charger, and a manila envelope. Inside were 41 printed photographs, all of Sarah. Taken through windows and through a vent grate, directly into her bedroom wall. The earliest timestamp was 4 days before she moved in. The notebook was a daily log. What time she woke up, what she ate, what she watched on TV, whether she seemed happy or tired. 5 weeks of entries, neat handwriting, dated at the top of every page. Carl Tibbs was arrested 3 days later at a motel 90 miles away. Hadn't fled the state or changed his name. The detective said he seemed genuinely surprised he'd been caught. Not panicked, not remorseful, just surprised. Like someone who had done this before and couldn't understand why this time was different. His unit had a hand-drawn floor plan with wall cavities marked in pencil. He'd done permitted work on the building 2 years prior, inspected, and approved unremarkable on paper. Investigators believe he had been doing this since at least 2019. Sarah was not the first. She moved out that night and never went back. Said she didn't want any of it. That everything in that apartment felt like it had been looked at. 6 months later she gave one brief statement. I had a list. 2 weeks of things that felt wrong, and I talked myself out of everyone because I didn't want to seem crazy. The list is real. The feeling is real. You're not imagining it. Carl Tibbs pled guilty. He is currently serving a 9-year sentence. The building was sold and has new tenants now. No supernatural element, no twist. Just a man with a floor plan, and enough patience to wait and see if anyone would notice. What I keep coming back to is that list on her phone. 2 weeks of small wrong things she almost didn't act on. Trust the list. I'm Ali. This is Made by Ali. Subscribe if you're new. I post new stories every week. Leave a comment, and tell me what detail got you. I read every one, and I'll see you next time.